Welcome back, class, to the true and accurate history of the English Empire. With me, your teacher, Snapwave. When we left off, London was at war with both the Aztec Empire and the Greek Empire, along with every single city-state on its home island continent. So things were going pretty well. Seriously, they were great. They were perfect. And here, this guy and these guys, the entire British Navy, were still in the midst of their preparations. And Alexander seemed to think it would be possible and acceptable to ask for this kind of peace treaty. Then forget you, Alexander. You're welcome to bring it all you want. I've got Angkor Wat.
The temple is like no other building in the world. It has towers and decoration and all the refinements which the human genius can conceive of.
Oh, Angkor Wat, gorgeous place, lots of culture. Very nice. What more can we say about it? What more need we say about it? Get around over there. So things were certainly interesting in London at the time. There was a certain desire, one could say, a certain desire to succeed, a certain desire to succeed against all odds, to survive against all odds, that was very typical of, let's say, the British attitude towards life in general. All this time, of course, barbarians still at the gates, but the Navy was fairly competent and was quite sure that they could take care of those barbarians without too much trouble. And indeed, they seem to be doing just that. As we can see here, they're becoming more and more adept at bombing land-based targets, which is always a positive thing to see. These warriors just didn't seem to get it until they died, and they died in ignorance, which really is a sad state of affairs, but what can you do? Warsaw, at least, is not at war with England, which is a positive for sure. Just going to creep around here. The British Empire, of course, had a interest in knowing what was coming at them, and the Navy proved to be an able form of early warning in that case. Not one to let their navy go idle, Queen Elizabeth certainly kept them busy dealing with the seemingly endless supply of barbarians who were just all over the place in this area. The entire British Navy continued to patrol all of England's shores, and Montezuma and Alexander seemed certain that they could force some sort of ridiculous peace treaty onto the British. No one, of course, was having any of that nonsense. But that was simply how diplomacy seemed to work in these historical simulations in a completely unrealistic manner. The British were hard at work preparing their newest offensive and defensive units. And of course, Alexander and Montezuma made peace, leaving them with the only common enemy happening to be the main character of this historical simulation, What a coincidence. It's certainly not a bug in the simulation AI at all. Right? Right. Now, without needing to worry about each other, that left only the British on their island for them to attack. Which is, good times for us involved in this simulation, indeed. It was only a matter of time until the Aztecs and the Greek attacked. So it was that the British Navy was stationed all along the shores of this great empire and given the task of simply defending Britain from all outside attackers. Whether or not they would come, no one was really sure. But what seemed certain was that if they did come, Britain was sorely unprepared for a land battle of that magnitude, especially against the fearsome horsemen of the Greek Empire. This is why the pikemen were so important. And why it was so important, don't think so. No. It's a fair deal because you're never going to topple Britain, Alexander. You can try all you want. So the British began building their land army in earnest.
Education is the best provision for old age.
At the same time, they realized that ignorant soldiers were not effective soldiers, and in order to be effective, they needed to have learning. In order to make them soldiers, they needed a reason to join the army. And so education was invented, and along with education came the advantages of it. And the best and easiest way to get access to education was, you guessed it, to join the army. It was an ingenious scheme, heralded the world around as the most effective way to get starry-eyed idealists. Montezuma finally capitulates. Fine. We will have peace with Montezuma. Queen Elizabeth decided to make peace with Montezuma, if only so that she did not have to worry about a war from two angles at once. London completed yet more warriors to defend itself, and began working on the Porcelain Tower at the same time. .680 AD was, then, a fairly decent year. Absolutely not. Don't think so. Was then an excellent year for Britain, as they only had one military enemy on their own continent to worry about, and so they could focus on expanding their naval base and continuing to explore the cultural imperatives of a long-lived empire upon which the sun will never set. A national epic began to be composed at York University, one about the brave British soldiers and how they single-handedly fought off the Aztec and British empires, or rather the Aztec and Greek empires, all on their own. No attempt at truth was made, but all the same, it made for a good story. And really, at the end of the day, that's all we need, is a good story. Times were hard in York, though. thanks to the persistent barbarians who had managed to get their hands on naval technology similar to, but not as amazing as, that of the British. Nevertheless, it still made York's lives more difficult. Alexander continued to be completely unrealistic in his pursuit of peace, and so Queen Elizabeth turned his own game back upon him. It is unacceptable, Alexander. Perhaps now you will realize just how unacceptable it is. Alternately, bring it. It's not the number of technologies that counts. It's how good those technologies are. And our technologies in the British Empire are absolutely the best. Why is York starving? York will simply have to make do until we can get our finances in order. York continued to deal with the barbarians in the best way it knew how, with brutal, suppressive force. Meanwhile, the pikemen of England, those based in London particularly, went out with Akbar to battle the barbarians to the south. It was time to make the land safe again for everyone. Take the high ground indeed. This was one of the first examples of a combined land-naval battle between the British Navy and the British Army. Perhaps because, until this point, the British Army had not been incredibly organized. Not surprising anybody, Montezuma and Alexander went to war almost immediately after they had finished having a peace treaty. And the barbarians continued to attempt to hold out against the British forces, but were soon to find that they were simply no match for British military ingenuity, strength, and power. First, one softens them up, then one charges in from the high ground. And that is how one takes an enemy encampment, and the much-needed gold which comes with it. Akbar returned to London, content in having fulfilled his duty. Warsaw became very happy with the destruction of those barbarians, but still did not deign to become the ally of the nation. Time continued to pass, and a new millennium once again was about to dawn. The British Empire was really no further ahead than it had been before, which was unfortunate for them. All the same, progress did continue to be made in many arenas, simply not in the economic or military, as perhaps Elizabeth may have wished. want to make sure you're getting some of the lovely music here. In 960 AD, the British adopted a naval tradition, which made their boats even more amazing. And that was really all there was to say about that. They figured out new and unique ways to squeeze just that extra bit of distance and speed and visibility out of their triremes. An advance that was soon to bear greater dividends than those merely in the arena of the trireme boat. I just wanted to make sure, can you hear me out there in the stream? Alright, just checking. It's been very quiet. I know that feeling, Chubbs. I know that feeling well. The national epic was completed in York at the dawn of the new millennium.
To the breeze, royal Odysseus spread his sail, and with his rudder skillfully he steered.
At the same time, a new form of ship
Do you not
was discovered.
know, my son, with what little understanding the world is ruled?
And a new era dawned on the British Empire, they being the first, of course, to enter an era of enlightened thinking. The time came then to continue researching simple things such as the wheel. The Renaissance was a time of great scientific progress.
Wisdom and virtue are like the two wheels of a cart,
In arenas which had already been discovered millennia ago by everybody else. It seemed every decade great advancements were being made. Like an unstoppable tsunami of scientific progress.
how happy are those whose walls already rise?
Just like that. The British Empire was becoming more and more industrious, and the Aztecs have lost their capital in 1060 AD to Alexander's ravening hordes. Noctitlan, as we can see, is a puppet state of the Greek, Alexander as ever being a deadly efficient commander in his wars against any of his enemies. This news came as a great shock to the British
Three
Empire.
things are to be looked to in a building: that it stand on the right spot, that it be securely founded, that it be successfully executed.
Remain on alert, ever vigilant, British Navy. The sun will never set upon our empire, so long as we remain vigilant at all times. 1080 AD.
Things always seem fairer when we look back at them, and it is out of that inaccessible tower of the past that longing leans and beckons.